Welcome to Mysterious Goings On, the podcast about creativity, writing, and mystery. Every week, we talk about all kinds of great fiction and meet the people who write it. We also feature explorations about creativity in all walks of life. Your host, Alex Greenwood, will join you right after this.
In February of 2022, I had a great opportunity to meet a really excellent writer, raconteur, and just a damn nice guy named Ed Davis. And Ed was riding the rails as a young man. He literally would hop onto boxcars and freight cars and ride the rails. He did the Jack Kerouac thing. And if you want to learn more about Ed and his really magnificent story of his life and what he did to lead up to what he did recently, which is write a new book called The Last Professional. It's a compelling story of two men linked by a yearning to explore and experience a simpler way of living. In the vein of Kerouac in London, he paints a rich tapestry of life on the move, where adventure is truly just a freight car away. So you can listen to that. The link will be in the show notes. But guess what? True to form, and a man who, walks it or rides it like he talks it, Ed went on I believe, a 14-stop Amtrak publicity tour for The Last Professional. And guess what? He stopped here in Kansas City. And actually, he was signing books at the same place I was signing books a few months ago, Afterword Tavern and Shelves. And I thought, I'm going to go by and say hello. And, Ed, of course, just wonderful guy and generous with his time. We sat down and we had this little brief conversation to talk a little bit about this whole effort he's undertaking to spread the word about this fine book. So I'll tell you what, there'll be links in the show notes to his book and to his previous appearance on the show. If you haven't heard it, I recommend that you go listen to it and then come back to this one. But and this is just a brief little meeting with Ed. After that's over, if you're interested, please consider sticking around, because I'll probably give you a little update on what's going on with my writing in my life. And now, without further ado, author of The Last Professional, right here in the midst of Afterword Tavern and Shelves. So you're going to hear patrons and drinks being mixed, and it's all going to it's very atmospheric and fun. Let's have a little chat and catch up with our friend Ed Davis. Well, listeners, it's always a treat when I talk to great authors, but it's an even better treat when they actually come through town and have time to spend a minute or two talking to us about how their book tour is going. I've told you our guest today, Ed Davis, who's been on the show, is doing this cross-country train trip. We're going to talk about Ed, about that and how it's going, and just a few other things while we've got him here for a few minutes. So, Ed Davis, welcome back to Mysterious Goings On.
It is so fun to actually see you in person. It's and I don't think virtually I have ever hit it off as well with an interviewer as I did with you. That was just a gas when we did that all the way back in February.
That's right. You're so kind. But as I always say, great episodes are because of great guests. So I really do appreciate that. And everybody's excited to have you back, I know, and talk about this and fill everybody in. What is this trip you're doing?
It's 30 days, 15 cities, about 6,500 miles, as much of it by train as possible. And the Last Professional takes place on the rails, so it makes perfect sense. And I really want to support local bookstores. And so this is a way to do that, to get the stores off the beaten path and to bring some attention to them. And museums and libraries. It's really been a treat so far.
Yeah, it looks like it's been a treat. You look great. You look like you're rested, you're having a good time, and you've got a big smile on your face. And we're sitting here, by the way, in Afterword Tavern and Shelves in Kansas City, by the way, where I did my book signing a few months ago. And they are great folks here. They have a great bar and great people, and it's a wonderful view of our little downtown area. So, Ed, when you're on that train, though, how do you not get flooded with all the memories? Does it just the sound and the smells and the rickety-rickety?
It's all there. It's absolutely all there. I haven't ridden since the early 1980s. I haven't ridden freight trains since the early 1980s.
Right.
But boy, going through some of these towns, we had a great event in Galesburg. There are 100 freights a day going through Galesburg.
Wow.
So it is a railroad town. And every time I'd hear a whistle, I wanted to drop everything and run for that train.
I noticed, too, I've been following your Instagram and all that. You're getting some writing done on this trip.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's... Oh, go right ahead.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. It is, for me, I don't have to travel to write but when I'm traveling, it feels like I need to write. Something about the travel brings that out.
Yeah.
And so I was at the Central Library this morning writing a piece of a journal I'm keeping for this. You know, I rode in Union Station in Denver. I'm catching a train tomorrow morning for 27 hours to Dallas, and I'm sure I'll be doing a lot of writing on that train.
Yeah. Well, you'll be going to Oklahoma City then, my hometown, I believe, right?
Well, let's see. Yes, as a matter of fact. Yes.
Well, wave for me if you would.
I
Please.
will do
Tell
that.
my mom hi. That'd be great. That'd be great. No, I'm going down there next month, so I'll see her then. But anyway, have people on the train seen you writing? Has anybody started a conversation with you?
You know, there's been a little bit of that, but honestly, it's been me starting conversations with them. And the people I'm most interested in are the staff. It is, Amtrak gets kind of a bad rap sometimes, and so I made it a point to learn a little bit about the folks who are working on the trains. And man, what great people. On the train to Galesburg, a woman named Patricia, and she was the dining car attendant, had the biggest smile, greeted us all like old friends. I said, Patricia, how long have you been doing this? 37 years.
Wow.
This is my next to the last trip. And she had energy like it was her first trip. It was just wonderful.
I was kind of glad to see they're putting some more money into Amtrak, I think, finally.
Yeah, the big infrastructure bill is throwing a lot of money at it. The Eastern Seaboard's doing pretty well. They're adding trains. They are at the disadvantage that they don't own the rails. And so they have to give priority to the freights where the real money is. So that's why they tend to run late sometimes.
That makes a lot more sense. I guess I didn't realize that. Tell me, though, as a writer of the road, do you see some hope for future generations of writers on the road? The way society is now, we're mobile, but we're mobile in a different way. I'm just curious about your thoughts about where do you see it going after you and I are long gone?
Whoa, okay. Well, structurally, I don't think there's a better armature to hang fiction on than a road story. Beginning, middle, and end. You start from a place that you know, and you're headed for adventures that are unknown, and your goal essentially is to get back to home, or some new version of home, or some new version of yourself in the home that you know. And so I think there will always be road stories. It goes back to Odysseus, man. And, great American fiction. Huck Finn is a road story.
Right.
Travel brings out the best in us. It's in our DNA as Americans. It's what we do.
Yeah. And, if you think about some of the parts of our language that are all about the road, well, you just said something that reminded me of Siren Song. The Siren Song, the call.
There you go.
There's that. Riding the rails is something that I think a lot of people have heard.
Yeah.
They understand it's about going somewhere, but they might not understand what the rails are anymore, right?
That's right.
Oh man, that's so interesting. I in reading your book, and I want to read some more. I'm glad to see you have road stories here as well, by the way, and I will be picking that up today.
Okay.
But what I love about the way you tell a story is it sounds silly, but it's a backdrop of movement, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just the movement, the physical movement of the train. It's not just that. It's the movement of the characters, and as you said, finding themselves along the way.
That's the deal.
And I just think that is such a tremendous gift to be able to write that way, and it's a tremendous amount of glee for me to read it.
Oh,
so,
that's great.
Yeah, I'm excited. So tell me, what's next when you get done with this thing?
Well, it's sort of taking on a life of its own, which is interesting. Yeah. So I'm getting requests for interviews long after the trip is done, which was really fun. After that, I don't know. I mean, this has fulfilled every fantasy I had about what a book tour should be.
Yeah.
Well, and there's some interesting things coming up in Dallas at the Allen Library. Allen's outside of Dallas. They've got me booked into a hall that holds a capacity of 225 people. Now, I have no idea if they're going to fill that, but Dallas has a huge railroad community, and these guys are really excited about hearing me talk about trains and writing trains in the book. So I just don't know. It's because it's such an elemental story. It's a natural for film. So if someone stumbles onto it, and that's what it takes, it's happenstance, it's luck. If somebody finds it, then maybe there's a future there.
Yeah, what was the author who wrote Up in the Air? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Alexander Payne picked that book up.
Yeah,
and
boom.
Boom.
Absolutely.
See, I could definitely see that happening with you. I really could. as I said earlier, you look to be in fine fettle. You seem to be happy. You're having a good time.
Absolutely.
I guess I'll just kind of close it off here and just let everybody know that it's really good to see you again.
Great to see you.
Next time you have a project, you know who to call, right?
Absolutely.
I want to talk about it.
Absolutely.
I always enjoy it. Now, listeners, you don't get to hear the rest of our conversation because, we're going to chit-chat about stuff, and then I'm going to get out of Ed's way and let him sign some books and all that. But again, Ed Davis, author of course, The Last Professional, but also Road Stories, and there's plenty more out there. Thanks again for taking a few minutes with us.
It has been an absolute treat. Thanks so much.
I think I told Ed off the mic that I wanted to be him when I grew up because I wanted to be traveling the country by rail and riding in all these different train cars and in all these different train stations and meeting all kinds of wonderful people and of course getting ideas for the next book, right? I mean, that's going on, right? So again, it was just a really distinct treat to see Ed in person. Again, on this show, I usually meet writers through a Zoom call, and you get to listen in as I ask my silly questions. And so every now and then when I get to actually meet a writer in person, it is a delight. And again, there'll be links in the show notes where you can find the link to his previous appearance here on the show, and of course links to where you can buy The Last Professional and learn more about him, get on his mailing list and all that stuff. So again, thanks Ed, I appreciate that. And safe travels, my friend. So, okay, I've actually had a few of you saying to me, Alex, you're not talking to us very much these days. And you know what? You're right. It's a lot easier to talk to, all these authors and other folks than it is to talk about myself. And I kind of felt like I had probably said plenty because of Pilate's Faith coming out. I mean, when you're flogging a book, as Ed was, on his multi-city tour. I didn't do a multi-city tour, but I had a book signing and I did lots of talking about it. And of course, I'm really proud of the Kirkus review and the online book club review and the Midwest book review. And then all of you readers who were kind enough to leave me nice starred reviews on Amazon. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But I kind of got to a point where I thought, well, I've said enough and I've got other things going on. So I'll just tell you a little bit really quickly. And if I have to duck away for a minute, it's because I've got a day job and I'm on a little quick break here this morning. And one thing I was just going to say is that, a lot of you know that I am a consultant by day. And well, I took a kind of a short-term contract, long-term, short-term contract. It's not a permanent job, but I'm basically working the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 5 now for a short-term project, and it's in the publishing industry, and I'm enjoying it immensely. It's complex and challenging, and I'm having to think and do some things that I'm not as comfortable doing. But life is about facing discomfort, and the only way you grow, is to challenge yourself and put yourself in new situations. And so I just thought it would be fun to do this, and I was just kind of tired of chasing new clients. When the opportunity came up, I liked the people immensely, and I still do, and I'll be doing this until this fall. So naturally, that probably leads some of you who like to read what I write to think, well, what are you going to do writing-wise? And I'll be first to tell you, probably not a whole lot, but there's two things I want to tell you. One, I am working on something that involves film, and that's all I can tell you. And no, it's not my film. I'm actually helping write a story for film with the people who've actually made films before out in LA. All I can say about it, the film may never get made. It's really been a great experience working with them on breaking the story and creating with the story that the screenplay will be based on. And that's just right now all I can tell you, but it's an honor to be asked and to actually get paid to write for Hollywood, so to speak. It's been pretty nice, but that's all I can tell you right now. I'll promise you this. I will tell you definitely, of course, if it goes forward and it gets made. And of course, I'll tell you also if, like so many films that try to be made, it doesn't work out, I'll definitely let you know. And maybe I can tell you a little bit more about it at that point. But right now, all signs, the magic 8 ball, all signs point to yes. So we're going to keep feeling good about it and keep our fingers crossed and just keep working hard on that. But it's kind of my part of that is in a bit of a holding pattern until they can get a deal. So anywho, that's one thing I've been working on. The other thing is I am actually I don't have a lot of free time, but I'm researching a new book, and no, it is not a John Pilate book. And I'm not going to tell you much about it other than to say it involves something about my past. It's really not about my past. It's about my my ancestors. I'll just say this real quick. My on my mother's side, her grandparents, who she was very close to, were circus people. And I don't mean carnies. They were, he was the band leader and I think occasional ringmaster. And my great-grandmother had a trained dog act. And they did the riverboat circus circuit at the turn of the last century. And if you didn't know that these massive steamships, these big riverboat paddle wheel things, if you didn't know that, some of these things were freaking huge. And they just go town to town and they would do a circus or they would do a play like Shakespeare or whatever. But my ancestors were actually involved in a circus. So, I always think it's kind of funny to say I'm descended from circus people because I am a little weird and a little unusual at times, I guess. I've been told that. So what I'm doing now, I'm doing some research. I've actually found not much, but a few books on riverboats and showboats as they called them. And I'm just checking that stuff out and learning as much as I can about that. And I've got a story coming to mind. So it will be a novel, but it is inspired by my great-grandparents. And it's weird. I feel like I'm kind of getting to know them and maybe I can see where some of the roots of, I used to be an actor and I'm still a writer, of course, and I'm a bit of a ham. I don't know if you've noticed that. And just kind of wondering if there's something, in the water, so to speak, if it's genetic or not. Don't know. But anyway, I'm really enjoying when I usually only get a day or two a week for an hour or two to sit down with these books and these materials I found, and I'm just making notes like crazy and editing. You should see this one book I found on showboats. It's got the little colored, sticky tabs you can buy. They peel off, and it's my book. I can do whatever I can write. I'm writing in the book, but I'm also making notes, and I have all these sticky tabs just everywhere, just looking for great stuff, and I'm pretty excited about it. Now, your next question may be, that sounds interesting, I hope, and when will that be done? No idea. I can guarantee it will not be done this year. There's just no way. There's just no way. I doubt I'll even start actually writing it until this contract with this job is done this fall. But by then I'll have my research lined out and I'll have a good idea what the story's going to be, what genre it's going to be, and all that. I'll have it, maybe even have a title or something by then. But so that's what I've been working on. So as I said, got a new gig, which is great. I'm flexing some different muscles. It's in publishing, which I'm loving. I'm working in an aspect of publishing I've never previously worked for. I've worked, in newspapers, and I was a magazine editor at one point, and now I'm working in another angle of publishing I never was in before, and it's trade publications and stuff like that. And I'm learning a lot, and I'm with one of the greatest group of professionals I've ever worked with. They're really nice people, and it's challenging. It's a lot to keep track of, but I'm having a good time. So the other thing I'll leave you with before I quit yakking at you here is to say that what's going on with the podcast. Two things. I do this podcast, Mysterious Goings On, and I also do PR After Hours, which obviously if you're listening to this, you know what Mysterious Goings On is. PR After Hours is more of a business-oriented podcast, and I've been doing that one since January 2020. And of course, I've been doing MGO, as I call Mysterious shorthand. I've been doing it since 2016. This show is my baby. This is my favorite show I've ever produced. I've produced half a dozen shows and podcasts since 2006, and this is my favorite. It's my baby, and I'll never stop doing it. PR After Hours may go on a bit of a hiatus after May 2022. There's just so many hours in the day, and also I don't think that necessarily podcasts have to go on forever. I mean, I think this show should, because it's my baby, but I think also there's kind of like limited TV series. They go for a couple or 3 years, and they say what they got to say, and they go. And that may be what happens with PR After Hours. But I'm not telling you I'm shutting it down or anything. It'll go on a normal hiatus at the end of May because we're doing 2 15-episode seasons, from January to May, and then take a big chunk of the summer off, and then we'll do the other 15 episodes next season in the fall leading up to Christmas. So that's probably going to be what we'll be doing with Mysterious Goings On as well, just to let you know. We will continue the show, don't worry, but it will go on a bit of a summer hiatus. I say that because I'm assuming I'm going to be super busy with this, that, and the other, and then sometimes, me, if I have some free time and I have a thought, or I get to interview somebody real quick out of nowhere, I'll do it. And it'll pop in your feed, and there you'll see it. So please don't unsubscribe from either show, because I'm not saying that there won't be things forthcoming. Don't worry about MGO, this show right here. It will definitely be back this fall. But if you're a PR After Hours fan, you'll see it a lot less in your feed because, as I say, something's got to give. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the conversation with Ed. And if you didn't hear the first time, the larger episode with Ed, I hope you'll listen to it. He's just a really great guy, and he's got some fascinating stories, and he just lived an interesting life, and I really enjoyed seeing him in person. I'm glad that I could take a minute and let you know what's going on with me. And tell you what, recording this towards the middle of April 2022. And that means we've got about another month and a half of episodes before we wind down season 9, and then we'll be starting season 10 coming up this fall. So don't forget to go to mgopod.com for all the show notes and all the updates. You can follow me on the Twitter and all that other stuff. You can find all those links there at mgopod.com. And as, of course, Mary's going to say at the end of this show, and, I just haven't said it in a while. I used to say it all the time, but my announcer, Mary, says it every show now. But until next time, keep reading. Have you lost your belief in finding a really good mystery thriller? Well, trust me, you've got to have faith. Pilate's faith. Kirkus Review says of the book that Greenwood pulls many tricks from his writer's satchel, has a quirkiness and energy, and snappy, snarky dialogue that keeps things moving briskly. A well-handled mystery with the appropriate twist at the end. Midwest Book Review says newcomers to Pilate will find no barriers to quick immersion in his personality and situation, while prior series readers immediately become involved in another conundrum which tests his skills and the ways in which others view him in his world. Surviving a recent attempt on his life, a weary John Pilate returns to Cross Township, where a bizarre string of shootings has paralyzed the tiny college burg. Pilate joins forces with the law to find out why people are being terrorized in his name and stop it. Unfortunately, when he turns to his family for support, he finds only hardened hearts. People are dying, accusing fingers are being pointed his way, and he has nowhere left to turn. Everything John Pilate believes in, family, sanity, and even himself, are shaken to the core in Pilate's faith. Online Book Club says, it's a gripping and fun story that kept me hooked. Greenwood's writing style is dynamic, and the book reads like a movie script. You can get John Pilate series number 8, Pilate's Faith, exclusively in paperback and ebook on Amazon.com. And remember, in the end, it all comes down to faith. Pilate's Faith. A Caroline Street Press book by J. Alexander Greenwood.
Thanks for joining us on Mysterious Goings On. Be sure to follow Mysterious Goings On wherever you get your podcast and never miss an episode. Don't forget, you can get the links to books and other things mentioned on the show at mgopod.com. Until next time, keep reading.